Hi Reddit, I, 42 farads, find myself in a situation that I never thought I'd be in, and I really need some outside perspective. I'm a board-certified specialist working at a prestigious university hospital. My life has always been about my career, helping patients through critical times. But now I'm on the other side, so to speak, and it's throwing me for a loop. I met my spouse, 35M, 5 years ago, when we started working at the hospital. We hit it off immediately, bonding over our shared passion for medicine and helping others. He was charming, intelligent, and had a great sense of humor that helped lighten the mood even on the toughest days. After dating for 3 years, we got married in a small ceremony with just our closest friends and family. It was a beautiful day, and I remember thinking how lucky I was to have found someone who understood the demands of my career and shared my values. Given my age, we knew we wanted to start a family right away, but it wasn't as easy as we'd hoped. We went through several rounds of treatments, each failure hitting me harder than the last. It was a strange experience being on the patient side, going through what I've helped so many others navigate. The hormones, the disappointments, the constant hope and fear, it was emotionally exhausting. My spouse was incredibly supportive throughout the process. He was there for every procedure, listened to me cry after each negative test, and never once made me feel like it was my fault. His unwavering support made me fall even more in love with him. After 2 years of trying, we were blessed with good news. I can't even describe the joy and relief we felt. We were cautiously optimistic, knowing the risks associated with pregnancy at my age. Every milestone felt like a victory. My spouse was there for every moment, his excitement growing with each passing week. Everything was going smoothly until last week when we attended a party with my spouse's old friends. That's when I met his ex for the first time. My spouse had mentioned them before. They dated all through college and for a few years after. They broke up when the ex moved abroad for work, but apparently remained friends. I wasn't prepared for how uncomfortable the evening would become. The ex seemed friendly at first, but as the night went on, her comments became increasingly pointed. She'd say things like, "I'm surprised to see you in person. You look so different from your pictures." I always thought they preferred a different type, but I guess tastes change. Everyone laughed it off as their particular brand of humor, but it felt like thinly veiled insults to me. The worst moment came when she raised a toast. She said, "To them, finally moving on. I'm so happy. If I hadn't decided to move away, who knows, you might not even be here with us tonight." The room fell silent for a moment before she laughed loudly, prompting everyone else to awkwardly chuckle along. I was hurt and angry, but I didn't want to cause a scene. When we got home, I told my spouse how I felt. He apologized profusely, admitting that his ex's behavior was inappropriate. He promised to distance themselves, saying our family was the priority now. I thought that was the end of it, but I can't shake this uneasy feeling. To complicate matters further, I'm now in the later stages of pregnancy. The stress of this situation isn't good for the baby, but I can't seem to let it go. I find myself constantly checking my spouse's phone when they're in the shower, something I've never done before, and feel ashamed about. I know it's a violation of their privacy, but the nagging doubt won't leave me alone. My spouse has been nothing but supportive throughout my pregnancy. He comes to every appointment, has been reading all the baby books, and even started preparing the nursery. His excitement about becoming a parent is palpable, which makes my current doubts feel even worse. I know hormones can play tricks on your mind during pregnancy, but I can't help wondering if there's more to this situation than I'm seeing. Am I letting my insecurities get the best of me? Or is my gut trying to tell me something? I'm torn between wanting to trust my spouse completely and feeling like I need to protect myself and our unborn child. The rational part of my brain says I'm being paranoid, but the emotional part can't let go of the way his ex looked at him, or the inside jokes they shared that I wasn't a part of. As a medical professional, I know the importance of mental health during pregnancy. The stress and anxiety I'm feeling aren't good for me or the baby. I've considered talking to a therapist about my feelings, but I'm worried that admitting these fears out loud will make them more real somehow. I've tried talking to my friends about this, but they all say I'm overreacting and that pregnancy hormones are making me crazy. Maybe they're right, but I can't shake the feeling that something isn't quite right. One of my closest friends even told me, "You're lucky to have such a devoted partner. Don't push him away with your insecurities." Her words stung, even though I know she meant well. I'm also worried about how this will affect our relationship once the baby arrives. Parenthood is challenging enough without these kinds of doubts lurking in the background. I want us to be a united front for our child, but how can we be if I'm constantly second-guessing my spouse's loyalty? I've always prided myself on being a strong, independent person. I've built a successful career. I've helped countless people through their own critical times. But now, when it's my turn to navigate these waters, I feel completely lost. It's humbling and frustrating to realize that all my professional knowledge doesn't make my personal life any easier. I keep replaying that party in my head, analyzing every interaction between my spouse and his ex. Was I imagining the lingering looks? The way their hands brushed when they handed each other a drink? Am I creating problems where none exist? I've always been a rational person, but now I find myself obsessing over every little detail. Part of me wants to demand that my spouse cut all ties with his ex, but I'm afraid of coming across as controlling and insecure. I don't want to be that person, but I also don't want to be naive. I've seen too many patients struggle with infidelity and broken trust to ignore my instincts completely. I'm due to give birth soon, and instead of feeling excited and prepared, I'm feeling anxious and unsure. This should be one of the happiest times of our lives, but I feel like there's this dark cloud hanging over us. I'm worried that these negative feelings will affect my bond with the baby, or worse, lead to postpartum depression. Last night, I had a dream that my spouse left me in the delivery room to be with his ex. I woke up in tears, and they held me, asking what was wrong. I couldn't bring myself to tell them about the dream. How do I explain these irrational fears without pushing them away? They've been so patient with my mood swings and physical discomfort. I don't want to add to their stress with my emotional turmoil. I've started to wonder about their past together. They were together for so long. Do feelings like that ever really go away? I know my spouse loves me, but is it possible he's still harboring feelings for his ex? The thought makes me sick to my stomach. I find myself comparing our relationship to theirs, wondering if what we have is as deep and meaningful as what they shared. I've even caught myself comparing my pregnancy body to his ex's slim figure at the party. It's ridiculous, I know. I'm growing a human being, and yet I'm worried about how I measure up. These thoughts are so unlike me, and I hate that I'm having them. I've always been confident in my appearance and abilities, but suddenly I feel like I'm back in high school, insecure and unsure of myself. Yesterday, I saw a text notification pop up on my spouse's phone from their ex. It was innocent enough, just asking how they were doing, but it sent my mind spiraling. Why are they checking in? Are they in regular contact? I wanted so badly to open the message and read their conversation, but I stopped myself. I don't want to be the kind of person who invades their partner's privacy, but the temptation was almost overwhelming. I'm trying to focus on the positives, our baby's health, my spouse's excitement about becoming a parent, the life we're building together. But these doubts keep creeping in, tainting even the happiest moments. When he talks about our future, I find myself wondering if he's really as committed as he seems, or if he's secretly regretting his choices. The irony of my situation isn't lost on me. I've counseled so many patients about trust, communication, and managing stress. I've reassured countless people that their feelings are valid and normal, but when it comes to my own life, I can't seem to take my own advice. It's like all my professional knowledge goes out the window when faced with my personal fears. I've thought about confiding in my mother, but she's always been critical of my decision to marry a younger person. I can already hear her saying, "I told you so," and I just can't handle that right now. My colleagues have noticed that I've been distracted lately, but I can't bring myself to discuss personal matters with them. I feel incredibly alone in all of this. To make matters worse, my work environment has become increasingly challenging. As my pregnancy progresses, I've had to adjust my schedule and limit my workload. My colleagues have been understanding, but I can't help feeling like I'm letting the team down. The other day, I overheard two of the younger staff members whispering about how I'm slowing down and wondering if I'll be able to keep up once I return from leave. It's frustrating to feel like I have to prove myself all over again after years of dedication to my career. The head of our department pulled me aside last week to ask if everything was okay. They mentioned that a few patients had commented on my seeming distracted during consultations. I assured them that everything was fine, but inside I was mortified. I've always prided myself on my professionalism and ability to separate my personal life from work. Now it feels like my personal troubles are seeping into every aspect of my life. As a specialist, I'm acutely aware of all the potential complications that can arise, especially for someone my age. Every twinge or discomfort sends me into a spiral of worry. Am I doing enough to ensure a healthy pregnancy? Should I be on bed rest? Am I letting my stress affect the baby? It's maddening to have all this medical knowledge and still feel so powerless and uncertain. I find myself second-guessing every decision, both personally and professionally. Should I have waited to have children? Did I rush into marriage? Am I going to be a good parent? These questions keep me up at night, along with the constant replaying of that party and all my doubts about my spouse. I guess what I'm asking is, how do I move forward from here? How do I trust my spouse and focus on our growing family without letting these doubts consume me? Has anyone else been in a similar situation? How did you handle it? I feel like I'm at a crossroads, and I'm terrified of making the wrong choice. I know this is a long post, but I really needed to get this off my chest. Any advice or perspective would be greatly appreciated. I feel like I'm going crazy, and I just want to enjoy the last few weeks of my pregnancy without this constant worry gnawing at me. Thank you for reading this far. I'm hoping that putting this out into the world will help me gain some clarity. I love my spouse, and I want to believe in our future together. I just need some help figuring out how to do that. Update 1. I can't believe I'm back here writing this, but I desperately need advice. The situation with my husband has taken a turn I never saw coming, and I'm at a complete loss. 2 days ago, just 48 hours before my due date, my husband received a call from his ex-girlfriend in Australia. Apparently, she's been diagnosed with stage 2 brain cancer and desperately needed someone to be with her. Without even discussing it with me, my husband booked a flight to Australia that very night. I was in shock. I tried to reason with him, reminding him that I could go into labor any day now. His response: "Due dates aren't exact. You might not deliver for another week or so. I'll be back before you know it." And just like that, he left for the airport. I felt like I was in some kind of nightmare. My husband, the man who had been so supportive throughout my pregnancy, had just abandoned me when I needed him most. I tried calling him repeatedly, but his phone was off. In desperation, I called my mother-in-law, who was equally shocked by her son's behavior. She came over immediately to stay with me. The next day, we finally got a text from my husband. He apologized for the sudden departure and promised he'd be back soon, hopefully before the baby was born. He said he'd accept whatever punishment I thought was fair when he returned, but right now, his friend needed him because she had no family in Australia. I was furious. How could he think that a cancer diagnosis was more of an emergency than the imminent birth of his child? I felt betrayed, scared, and completely alone. As luck would have it, I went into labor the very next day. My mother-in-law tried calling my husband to let him know, but again, no answer. She didn't even bother texting him this time. Thankfully, my parents had flown in the day before, so I had support during the delivery. But my husband's absence was painfully obvious. The birth was difficult and emotional. Every contraction reminded me that the person who was supposed to be by my side had chosen to be with someone else. When our daughter finally arrived, the joy I felt was tainted by the sadness and anger of my husband's betrayal. It's been 3 days since I gave birth, and my husband still isn't home. He's called a few times, full of apologies and excuses, but I can barely bring myself to speak to him. How can I ever trust him again after this? I've been thinking a lot about divorce. The thought terrifies me. I never imagined I'd be considering this, especially with a newborn, but I don't know how to move past this betrayal. My mother-in-law, bless her, has been incredibly supportive. She's furious with her son and has even offered to help me find a lawyer if that's what I decide to do. Part of me wonders if this is karma for all the doubts I had during my pregnancy. But even in my darkest moments of insecurity, I never imagined my husband would actually leave me like this. I'm torn between wanting to give him a chance to explain himself when he returns and wanting to have divorce papers ready for him to sign. I keep replaying our life together in my head, wondering if there were signs I missed. Was he always this selfish, and I just didn't see it? Or is this completely out of character for him? The postpartum hormones aren't helping. One minute I'm sobbing, missing him, and wanting him to come home and meet our daughter. The next, I'm filled with rage, wanting to change the locks and never let him see us again. My colleagues at the hospital have been incredibly understanding. They've arranged for me to take an extended maternity leave, no questions asked. Dr. Thompson even called to check on me, offering support and resources if I need them. It's a small comfort, but I'm grateful for it. I'm trying to focus on my daughter. She's perfect and beautiful, and she deserves all the love and attention I can give her. But it's hard not to worry about the future. Will my husband be a part of it? Do I want him to be? How do I co-parent with someone I'm not sure I can trust? I know I need to make a decision soon. My husband texted yesterday saying he'll be home in a few days. I have to decide whether I'm going to let him come home or if I'm going to have my mother-in-law tell him to stay away. I'm considering asking him to stay with his parents when he returns, at least for a while. I need time to process everything that's happened and to bond with our daughter without the stress of confronting him. I keep wondering about his ex-girlfriend too. Is she really as sick as he says, or was this all an elaborate ruse to get him to come to her? I hate that I'm even thinking these thoughts, but I can't help it. Reddit, I'm at a crossroads. Do I try to salvage this marriage for the sake of our newborn daughter, or do I cut my losses and start planning for a future as a single mother? How do I even begin to trust him again after this? Any advice would be deeply appreciated. I feel like I'm drowning in a sea of emotions, and I can't see a clear path forward. Update 2. It's been 4 days since my last update, and I feel like I'm living in a surreal nightmare. I wanted to update you all on what's been happening. First, thank you all for your support and advice. It's been a lifeline during this difficult time. I've read every comment, and I appreciate each one of you. My husband still hasn't returned home. He calls daily, pleading for forgiveness and begging to come home. Each time, I tell him I need more time, His voice both infuriates and breaks my heart. I can hear the regret, but I can't forgive him yet. What's made this worse is the barrage of messages from my husband's friends. It started 2 days ago, a flood of texts, calls, and emails from people I barely know, all saying I'm overreacting and need to forgive my husband. At first, I was just annoyed, but as the messages kept coming, I realized this wasn't spontaneous. The messages were too similar, too coordinated. My husband had orchestrated this campaign of guilt and manipulation. One message particularly struck a nerve. "We never thought you'd be the kind of person to use a child as a pawn to punish your partner." I was floored. Is that what they think I'm doing? I'm not punishing anyone. I'm protecting my daughter and myself from someone who abandoned us at the most critical moment. This attack has only strengthened my resolve. If my husband thinks he can pressure me into forgiveness through his friends, he clearly doesn't understand the gravity of what he's done. After a sleepless night, I made a decision. I'm going to file for full custody of our daughter. I know it's drastic, but I feel it's necessary. If he can easily walk away once, who's to say he won't do it again? I need to protect my daughter from that instability. I called a lawyer this morning and explained the situation. She was sympathetic and assured me that given the circumstances, I have a strong case for full custody. We're meeting tomorrow to start the paperwork. My mother-in-law has been my rock through all of this. When I told her about my decision to seek full custody, she was fully supportive. She even offered to testify on my behalf if needed. I'm incredibly grateful for her support. My daughter is my sole focus now. Every time I look at her, I'm filled with determination to give her the best life possible, with or without her father. She deserves a parent she can count on, and I'm committed to being that person. The past few days have been a crash course in single motherhood. It's exhausting and overwhelming, but also rewarding. Each little milestone feels like a victory. I promise her constantly that no matter what happens with her father, she will always be loved and protected. I know the road ahead won't be easy. Single motherhood, a potential custody battle, rebuilding my life. It's all daunting. But for the first time since this began, I feel a sense of clarity. I know what I need to do, and I'm ready to fight for what's best for my daughter and myself. I'm sure some will think I'm being too harsh, but unless you felt the betrayal of being abandoned during childbirth, I don't think you can truly understand. This isn't just about me anymore. It's about my daughter and the life I want to provide for her. So Reddit, I'm not really asking for advice this time. I'm sharing my decision and hoping for support. Has anyone been through a custody battle? Any tips for navigating this while caring for a newborn? And how do I handle the continued pressure from my husband's friends? Thank you all again for your support. It means more than you know. Update 3. I can't believe I'm back here with another update, but so much has happened in the past few days that I feel I need to share. Thank you all for your continued support and advice. It's been invaluable during this challenging time. The legal proceedings for the divorce and custody agreement are set to begin in a couple of days. My husband has decided not to contest the divorce, but he's demanding at least partial custody of our daughter. We're going to see how that plays out. I'm open to the idea of shared custody eventually, but not until our daughter is at least a couple of years old. That's what we'll be negotiating. I thought I'd feel scared now that it's all becoming real, but I've never felt more certain about anything in my life. I think some of this certainty comes from a message I received from my husband's ex-girlfriend yesterday. She reached out to me, saying she never meant to be a homewrecker, but that she really needed someone by her side, and since her parents couldn't be there for her, my husband was the only other person she could think of. She also told me that over the past couple of years, she had tried to contact him several times, and he had always turned her down, saying that I wouldn't approve. But here's the kicker. She knew that her oldest friend in the world would always be there for her, especially if she was sick. That's why she contacted him. She apologized for causing trouble in my marriage, but then had the audacity to suggest that I should let him retain his individuality instead of being so controlling. So, it turns out my gut feeling was right. He hadn't blocked her at all, and they had actually stayed in touch. Maybe not in the way I initially feared, but they were in contact. The worst part was when she told me that they had shared a moment when they were together in Australia. They ended up kissing for a couple of minutes, but apparently my husband pulled away, saying he couldn't do this, especially while his wife was pregnant with his child. She told me this as if it was supposed to make me feel better that he didn't let the kiss last for more than a couple of minutes, and that's how loyal he was to me. I was absolutely disgusted. This confirmation of my suspicions has made me even more determined to proceed with the divorce and custody battle on my terms. I've spoken to my lawyer, and we've adjusted our petition to demand a bit more, given this new information. I feel like I deserve it, considering I've been cheated on. When my husband finally returned home, I confronted him with this information. At first, he tried to deny it, but when I showed him the messages from his ex, he broke down. He admitted to the kiss, but swore it didn't go any further. He begged for forgiveness, saying it was a moment of weakness and that he regrets it more than anything in his life. But you know what? I don't care. The trust is broken. The fact that he could do this while I was heavily pregnant with his child, that he could abandon me right before I gave birth, it's unforgivable. The man I thought I married, the man I thought would be a devoted father to our child, simply doesn't exist. My mother-in-law was there when I confronted him. The look of disappointment and anger on her face when she heard her son's confession was heartbreaking. She told him she raised him better than this, and that she was ashamed of his actions. Her support means the world to me. As for our daughter, she's thriving despite all this chaos. She's the light in my life right now, the reason I get up every morning and keep fighting. Every time I look at her, I'm reminded of why I'm doing this. She deserves better than a father who would abandon her before she was even born. I know the road ahead won't be easy. Single motherhood, a divorce, a custody battle, it's all daunting. But I feel stronger and more determined than ever. I'm ready to face whatever comes my way. To those who said I was overreacting or being too harsh in my previous posts, I hope this update clarifies things. This isn't about me being controlling or unforgiving. This is about protecting myself and my daughter from a man who has proven he can't be trusted. I'm still struggling with the emotional fallout of all this. There are moments when I look at old photos or remember good times, and I feel a pang of sadness for what could have been. But then, I remember his betrayal, and I know I'm making the right decision. My focus now is on healing, both for myself and for my daughter. I've started therapy to help process all of this, and I'm looking into support groups for single mothers. I'm also throwing myself into motherhood, cherishing every moment with my little girl. As for my career, I'm planning to return to work once my maternity leave is over. My colleagues have been incredibly supportive, and I'm looking forward to getting back to helping other women through their pregnancies and deliveries. If anything, this experience has given me a new level of empathy for my patients. So, Reddit, this is likely my final update. Thank you all for your support, advice, and kind words throughout this ordeal. Your encouragement has been a source of strength for me. To anyone out there going through something similar, stay strong, trust your gut, and remember, you deserve better. Wish me luck as I start this new chapter of my life. It's not the one I expected, but I'm determined to make it a good one for both me and my daughter.